The US government once spent $2.6 million to teach Chinese prostitutes to drink responsibly. That's not a joke, that's your tax dollars. And it's not even in the top 10 of the most insane things on this list. I'm about to show you 30 government projects so ridiculously wasteful, you'll question everything. From a bridge to nowhere that cost $400 million to a program that literally made shrimp run on treadmills. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly where billions of your dollars vanished. And you won't believe number 23. Let's get into it. We're starting strong with Alaska's Gravina Island Access Project, famously known as the Bridge to Nowhere. Congress approved nearly $400 million to build a bridge connecting Ketchikan, Alaska, population 8,900, to Gravina Island, population 50. That's almost $8 million per island resident. The bridge would have been longer than the Golden Gate Bridge, to reach an island with an airport and basically nothing else. The project became so controversial it got canceled in 2015, but not before Alaska spent $75 million on the road leading to where the bridge would have been. A road to nowhere for a bridge to nowhere. Poetry. Number 2. In 2009, Congress allocated $500,000 for the Sparta Teapot Museum of Craft and Design in North Carolina. Now, I love tea, but this museum was basically a room with teapots in it that closed within a few years. The building is now a real estate office, so your tax dollars helped someone get a sweet office space. At least the teapots were there. The tea is especially bitter when you realize that's $500,000 that could have funded actual infrastructure. The US government spent $27 million to teach Moroccans pottery. Through USAID, this program aimed to preserve traditional pottery techniques. Here's the thing, Morocco has been making pottery for literally thousands of years. They've been doing just fine. This is like paying Mozart's ghost to learn hot cross buns on the recorder. The program's own evaluation found limited impact on incomes. Translation, we paid $27 million for vibes. And we're just getting started. Drop a comment right now with the most wasteful spending you've seen in your own city or state. I'm reading them all. Now, if you think pottery classes are bad, wait until you hear about the military's crystal ball experiment. From 1978 to 1995, the CIA and Department of Defense spent $20 million on Project Stargate, trying to train psychic spies using remote viewing. Yes, really. The military hired people who claimed they could see distant locations with their minds. They tried to spy on the Soviets with their brains. After spending 2 decades and $20 million, the CIA concluded, there's no documented use for this in intelligence operations. I'm using my psychic powers right now to see how this got approved. Oh wait, I'm seeing something. It's incompetence. The Department of Defense spent $43 million to build a single compressed natural gas station in Afghanistan. For context, a similar gas station in Pakistan costs about $500,000. That's an 8,600% markup. The Special Inspector General called it troubling. I'd call it a war crime against accounting. The real kicker? When auditors asked the military to explain the cost, they couldn't. The documents mysteriously disappeared. Nothing suspicious there. The military spent $750,000 building soccer fields at Guantanamo Bay. For the guards. While detainees were held in controversial conditions and the facility itself cost billions to operate, someone thought, you know what we need? Premium FIFA regulation soccer fields. Look, I support recreation. But maybe, and I'm just spitballing here, maybe we could have used regulation-ish soccer fields for $50,000 and put the other $700,000 toward literally anything else. The National Science Foundation spent roughly $3 million on studies that included putting shrimp on tiny treadmills. Yes, you're seeing this correctly. Researchers wanted to study the effects of disease and pollution on shrimp. Noble goal. But the treadmill thing became a viral sensation for all the wrong reasons. Scientists defended it, saying it was a small part of larger research, but here's the thing. Once the public sees shrimp CrossFit, the message is lost. Senator Tom Coburn featured it in his Wastebook report. The shrimp did get absolutely shredded, though. Not satisfied with shrimp fitness, the National Science Foundation also funded $856,000 to put mountain lions on treadmills. At least these treadmills were bigger. The study aimed to understand mountain lion metabolism. Sure, but you know what else we could understand for $856,000? How to house 17 homeless families for a year. Just saying. The National Science Foundation granted $307,000 to study the synchronized swimming patterns of sea monkeys, technically brine shrimp. Researchers examined how they move in groups. The study concluded they move in response to environmental cues. Groundbreaking stuff. Meanwhile, teachers across America buy classroom supplies with their own money, but at least we know how sea monkeys coordinate their movements. The NIH spent $171,000 studying gambling behavior in monkeys. They wanted to understand risk-taking decisions. The monkeys were given juice rewards and researchers tracked their choices. Conclusion? Monkeys like rewards and take risks to get them. I could have told you that for $50 and a banana. Plot twist. The monkeys probably made better financial decisions than the people who approved this grant. The NIH funded a $2.6 million study to reduce alcohol abuse among Chinese prostitutes. The program taught drinking safety and HIV prevention in karaoke bars. Look, harm reduction is valid. But there were questions about whether this was the best use of American taxpayer money in a foreign country, especially when similar domestic programs were underfunded. Congressional critics had a field day, and the program was eventually discontinued. The real question: why were we running public health programs in Chinese karaoke bars while American public health departments were cutting staff? Okay, which one made you angriest so far? Psychic spies? Mountain lion gyms? Tell me in the comments because we're about to go international with the waste. And trust me, number 18 involves enough money to make your head spin. The US spent approximately $144 billion on reconstruction in Afghanistan. The Special Inspector General found that at least $8 billion was pure waste, built structures that were never used, couldn't be sustained, or were literally blown up before completion. We built a $36 million command center that was never used, a $25 million headquarters that cracked and tilted before completion. We literally built things that fell apart faster than my New Year's resolutions. The Pentagon's own reports called it unlimited money with limited oversight. That's government speak for we lost the receipts. USAID spent $20 million developing a Pakistani version of Sesame Street called Sim Sim Hamara. The goal was promoting education and tolerance. Here's where it went wrong. After spending all that money, the show got canceled due to creative differences and financial mismanagement. Most of the budget disappeared into overhead and consulting fees. So we spent $20 million to teach kids in Pakistan nothing, because the show barely aired. Can you tell me how to get accountability? The US built $200 million worth of training facilities for Iraqi police. Sounds good, right? Except they built them in the wrong locations with the wrong specifications, and most were never used. One facility was built without running water in the desert. Another had electrical systems incompatible with Iraqi standards. These weren't just mistakes. These were, how did this pass multiple approval stages mistakes. The buildings are now abandoned. $200 million monuments to not reading the instruction manual. USAID spent $9 million training Lebanese teachers to teach English, in a country where English education already existed, and many teachers were already fluent. The program's evaluation found minimal improvement in student outcomes. Turns out the issue wasn't teacher training, it was broader educational infrastructure that the program didn't address. So, we spent $9 million to marginally improve something that was already happening. Efficiency. The US provided over $100 million to help build a new government complex in Nigeria. The buildings were completed but couldn't be occupied because they lacked basic utilities and infrastructure connections. We built a government building that can't government. It's like buying a car without an engine and declaring victory. Years later, the buildings still weren't fully operational. But hey, they look great from the outside, which I'm sure is very useful. Oh boy! The F-35 Joint Strike Fighter is the most expensive weapons program in history, $1.7 trillion over its lifetime. Now it's a real plane that flies, so it's not a complete waste. But the cost overruns and problems? Legendary. Years behind schedule, billions over budget, and plagued with technical issues. The helmet alone costs $400,000 per pilot. The ejection seat could injure lightweight pilots. The software has needed constant updates. Look, national defense matters, but when a program costs more than the GDP of most countries and still has problems decades in, maybe, just maybe, someone should have asked harder questions earlier. It's like ordering a pizza and getting it 10 years later, cold, and being charged $1.7 trillion. But hey, it's technically a pizza. Speaking of pizza, The USDA spent $46,000 studying whether people would eat more vegetables if they were on pizza. The groundbreaking conclusion? People do eat more vegetables on pizza. Revolutionary. Game-changing. Definitely worth $46,000. I could have conducted this study at my local Pizza Hut for the cost of a large Supreme, but I don't have a PhD, so what do I know? The National Science Foundation provided $10,000 for a study that involved, among other things, literally watching grass grow. The study examined plant growth patterns. Now, botanical research has value, but watching grass grow became a punchline in waste reports. When your study can be described using the most famous idiom for boredom, maybe rethink the PR strategy. At least this one was only $10,000. That's a bargain compared to some of these others. It's almost growing on me. From 2011 to 2014, the National Guard spent $88 million sponsoring NASCAR driver Dale Earnhardt Jr. The goal? Military recruitment. The problem? An analysis found the sponsorship generated only 20 actual recruits. That's $4.4 million per recruit. A typical military recruiter costs about $75,000 per year in salary and benefits. We could have hired 1,173 recruiters for 3 years instead, but I guess that wouldn't have been as fast. The program was eventually canceled when someone finally looked at the numbers and had a panic attack. The US Army spent $5 billion developing and deploying the Universal Camouflage Pattern from 2004 to 2012. The idea? One camouflage for all environments. The reality? It didn't work in any environment. It was too blue-gray. Soldiers in Afghanistan stood out like school buses in the desert. Forest environments? Might as well wear a neon sign. After 8 years and $5 billion, the Army admitted defeat and switched to a new pattern. So we spent $5 billion on camouflage that made soldiers more visible. That's not just wasteful, that's dangerous. The British Army literally offered to share their effective pattern for free. We said no. Pride costs $5 billion apparently. We're at the halfway point and I'm already exhausted. Which project made you physically angry? Drop it in the comments, because we've got 9 more that'll make you question everything, and number 28 involves lizards and coffee. Stay with me. The National Science Foundation spent $325,000 creating a robotic squirrel to study how rattlesnakes react to squirrel behavior. They built an animatronic squirrel that tail flagged at rattlesnakes. The findings? Rattlesnakes respond to squirrel tail movements. Again, and I cannot stress this enough, I could have told you that for free. Snakes respond to movement. It's like their whole thing. The researchers defended the work as understanding predator-prey dynamics. Fair. But Robo-Squirrel became an easy target for waste reports. Sometimes good science has terrible optics. The Federal Aviation Administration spent $57,800 in the 1990s measuring the head sizes of flight attendants. They wanted to ensure oxygen masks fit properly. Okay, safety matters. But the study measured 432 flight attendants' heads in extraordinarily specific detail, creating a database of cranial measurements that probably didn't need to be that extensive. The masks already fit. This was solving a problem that didn't really exist. But now the FAA has the most comprehensive flight attendant head database in human history, so mission accomplished? The USDA spent $1.5 million researching how to make beef jerky from meat byproducts and cheaper cuts. The goal was reducing waste and improving food value. Here's the thing, people already make jerky from various meat parts. The commercial jerky industry has existed for decades. This research essentially rediscovered what Jack Link's figured out years ago. The study produced exactly 0 innovations that changed the jerky industry, but it did give government researchers a lot of jerky to sample, so not a total loss. The National Institute of Health spent $1.1 million studying whether video games could improve balance in seniors. They specifically looked at games like Wii Fit. The conclusion? Limited benefit. Turns out traditional physical therapy works better and costs less. Who knew that actual physical therapy would beat a Nintendo Wii at physical therapy? Nintendo sent America a thank you card for the free marketing research. Probably. After sea monkeys, scientists got $50,000 to study synchronized movements in sea slugs. The research examined how these creatures coordinate their locomotion. The findings contributed to understanding neural networks and locomotion. That's legitimately useful science. But when you phrase it as synchronized swimming sea slugs, it sounds like the ocean's least interesting Olympic sport. The real waste here is that good science keeps getting branded in the worst possible way. Boston's Big Dig was supposed to cost $2.6 billion. Final price tag? $24.3 billion. That's not a typo, $24 billion with a B. The project took 16 years instead of 10. It was plagued by leaks, ceiling collapses that killed people, criminal arrests, and corruption. The tunnel system is impressive, but the cost overrun is one of the most extreme in American infrastructure history. To put this in perspective, we could have built the original Panama Canal 4 times over with the overrun amount alone. Someone needs to write a textbook called How Not to Manage Construction and just put a picture of the Big Dig on the cover. The NIH awarded $465,000 to study gambling behavior in pigeons. Researchers created a pigeon casino to understand risky decision-making. The birds were trained to peck at different options with varying reward probabilities. Findings showed pigeons exhibit similar risk-taking patterns as humans in gambling scenarios. This actually contributed to understanding addiction neuroscience. But all anyone remembers is we built a bird casino. The study was peer-reviewed and published, but the headline wrote itself, "Government Teaches Pigeons to Gamble." Not the worst on this list, but definitely the most Vegas. The National Science Foundation funded several $1 million in research that included studying how fast various marine animals decompose, including fried fish. The research was actually about understanding marine ecosystems and carbon cycles. That's real science with implications for oceanography and climate. But when you tell the public you're studying how long fried fish takes to rot, you lose the room immediately. The optics are scientists playing with dead fish for millions of dollars. Lesson: if you're doing legitimate science, maybe don't lead with the rotting fish angle. We're ending with Healthcare.gov, the website that cost over $2 billion to build and immediately crashed on launch day in 2013. The site was supposed to handle millions of users. On day 1, only 6 people successfully enrolled. 6 out of millions trying. That's a 99.999% failure rate. The contractors blamed each other. The government blamed the contractors. Testing was insufficient. The deadline was political. The oversight was absent. It took months and hundreds of millions more to fix. Yes, the site eventually worked and millions got healthcare. That's good. But the launch was a masterclass in how not to do technology procurement. Amazon's entire website cost less to build. The entire thing. So did Facebook. We spent enough money to build several Silicon Valley unicorns on a website that didn't work. And that, my friends, is how we wrap up this journey through government waste. Okay, let's be real for a second. After going through all 30 of these projects, you might notice some patterns. First, lack of oversight. Most of these projects had nobody asking, "Does this make sense?" at the critical moment. The bridge to nowhere got approved because Alaska's senator was powerful, not because it was needed. Second, the sunk cost fallacy. The F-35, the Big Dig, once billions are spent, nobody wants to admit failure, so we throw more money at broken projects. Third, good intentions, terrible execution. Teaching Pakistani kids or Lebanese teachers or Chinese public health, these aren't bad goals. The implementation and the price tag are where things go sideways. Fourth, perverse incentives. Military contractors that get paid more for delays. Consultants that bill by the hour with no delivery requirements. When the system rewards waste, you get waste. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Some of these, like the F-35 or medical research, aren't completely wasteful. They're complicated. The F-35 is a working aircraft that will serve for decades. Some research studies that sound silly contribute to real science. But the extreme costs, the lack of accountability, the taxpayer money that vanishes into overhead and consulting fees, that's where the waste lives. We just covered about $35 billion in documented waste. That's a conservative estimate. The real number across all government projects? Probably hundreds of billions. The Government Accountability Office estimates improper payments, just mistakes and fraud, at over $200 billion per year. So when you hear politicians saying there's no money for infrastructure, healthcare, education, or veterans benefits, remember this list. The money exists. It's just being set on fire in the most creative ways possible. Now, before the comments explode, let's add some context. The federal budget is about $6 trillion annually. These 30 projects, as wasteful as they are, represent a tiny fraction of government spending. Most government programs work reasonably well. Your mail gets delivered. Air traffic control keeps planes from crashing. The CDC tracks diseases. The Weather Service warns you about hurricanes. Government waste is real, but it's not the only story. Private sector waste is also real. Corporations make terrible decisions that cost billions all the time. The difference is that's their money. This is our money. Also, hindsight is 2020. The bridge to nowhere seemed reasonable to Alaska voters at the time. The F-35 was supposed to be revolutionary. Healthcare.gov was rushed for political deadlines. These weren't all cases of mustache-twirling villains cackling while burning cash. They were cases of normal human failures. Optimism bias, poor planning, perverse incentives, lack of accountability, political pressure, and complexity that nobody fully understood. But, and this is a big but, that doesn't mean we shrug and accept it. The fact that waste is complicated doesn't mean we ignore it. Every dollar wasted on a bridge to nowhere is a dollar that didn't go to fixing an actual bridge. Every billion lost to cost overruns is a billion not spent on schools or veterans or infrastructure that people need. The solution isn't government bad, private sector good, or vice versa. The solution is accountability, real oversight, consequences for failure, whistleblower protection for people who expose waste, politicians who actually read the bills they pass, and citizens who pay attention. Which brings me to you. So here's my question for you. Which project on this list made you the angriest? Was it the psychic spies, the $43 million gas station, the sea monkey synchronized swimming? Drop a comment right now telling me which one was the worst and why. I want to hear your reasoning, and if you know of a government waste project I missed, tell me. If this video does well, I'll make a part 2. And look, if you made it this far, you clearly care about this stuff, so hit that subscribe button. I'm making more videos breaking down complex topics with humor, research, and just enough sarcasm to keep it interesting. Share this with someone who complains about taxes. Share it with your politically engaged friend. Share it with your uncle who forwards conspiracy emails. At least this is documented reality. Remember, this isn't about left versus right. This isn't about big government versus small government. This is about smart government versus dumb government. And right now, we've got a lot of dumb. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more, comment below. And next time you pay taxes, just remember, somewhere a shrimp is running on a treadmill that you paid for.